This was one of those giant tests with 100 questions. Nobody had seen it change at all for almost 100 years. Now all he had to do was score 50 more meals of wild braised meat. It charged right at a Tier 3 blunt armored boar, even though the boar was way bigger, probably dozens of times its size. Since he was 8, Yuan couldn't sense spiritual energy anymore. He wasn't able to make his body stronger like everyone else, and he couldn't team up with any of the stronger spirit creatures either. About 100 years back, something changed in the world. Spiritual energy made a comeback and started running everything. It became the main thing people relied on, powering up lives in ways nobody had seen before. Under its power, every living thing started to change. Some turned wild and tough, their bodies getting stronger and more fierce. The other path was all about changing up spiritually, putting the focus on attacks that used energy. People started picking up all kinds of jobs that used spirits, just like how others used different powers. None of that really mattered to Yuan. Ever since he was a kid, he'd always been kind of weak. For him, the idea that spiritual energy could make life better was just make-believe. When he turned 18, he ran his own little shop that sold spirit creatures. The air felt way too hot, and without any way to cool down, the lily in front of him seemed like it might just give up and wilt. This healing plant was at the bottom of the list, pretty much useless, even less important than the green vines people usually fed to animals. Most people didn't bother with low-tier spirits. They all knew it made more sense to put their effort into stronger ones, since the higher spirits could level up way faster. Right at that moment, a swooped by like it always did. It had its owner's medicine held tight in its beak, making sure he remembered to take it. Yuan thought back to when he first got his weakest 100-question beast, and back then, both of them could barely keep their balance for about 2 weeks. Training wasn't even an option. They just weren't up for it. After that, he hung out by the shop's entrance, yawning over and over as the hours dragged on. They pretty much spent half the day just sitting there, looking bored and tired, not really doing anything. At last, they noticed a mom and her daughter walking together along the sidewalk. A little girl spotted Clever and got excited. She turned to her mom and pointed him out, recognizing him as one of those beasts that always had a lot of questions, just like the character Coco she knew. Clever stood at his spot, doing his best to catch the attention of people passing by. He put on a friendly face and did what he could to get folks interested in the green vines he was selling. The creature in the girl's arms gave off this smug vibe. Its fur looked dry and gray, kind of like it had been picked last or left on the shelf for too long. It definitely didn't seem like it could measure up to the others. Clever tensed up right away. He couldn't believe what he just heard. Both of them were known for acing those tough quizzes, so neither wanted to back down. He stared straight ahead, ready to prove himself, and without thinking too much about it, he stuck out his hand for a quick game of rock, paper, scissors, ready to settle things the old-school way. Yuan took a breath and helped him relax. He wondered how anyone could play rock, paper, scissors with paws that big. Instead of worrying about it, Yuan decided it was better to just head out for a walk together. Yuan yanked the shutter down and locked up the shop. Business had been slow all day, so closing early didn't really matter. Clever kept thinking to himself that if he could just grab a few more pieces of braised meat, maybe he'd actually get a little smarter. He figured that way, next time, he wouldn't end up losing again. They walked over to the park together. He did his best to cheer him up. He knew his friend wasn't the sharpest out there, but at least he didn't cost much. Clever couldn't help it. He just cried out. Hearing those words didn't make him feel any better. If anything, it just stung even more. Deep down, Yuan couldn't help but put the blame on himself. He kept thinking that if he could sense spiritual energy, maybe things would have turned out differently. Right then, an armored boar crashed out from the bushes by the park. It looked like some kind of livestock that had gotten loose. The not-so-bright Clever didn't see anything special. To him, it just looked like 50 plates of meat strolling around, ready to eat. Without thinking twice, he rushed straight at them. Yuan managed to catch him just in time and took off running in the opposite direction. Seriously, risking your life just for some food? Not smart. That creature was way out of their league. Out of nowhere, the boars made this weird, deep noise that echoed through the trees. It wasn't like anything anyone had heard before, and it made the whole group freeze for a second. Normally, this spirit beast was pretty chill. Clever's wild move wasn't really enough to set it off. Yuan didn't get a chance to think about why things were going off the rails. He was way more tired than he usually was, and it was starting to get to him. He took off running, but his shoes lost grip and he crashed straight onto the ground. And Clever didn't waste a second. They jumped in front of Yuan, putting themselves between him and the beast. Both of them looked ready to protect him, no matter what happened next. Yuan could tell they were outmatched, so he focused hard on staying awake. He wouldn't let himself black out, not now. Suddenly, something strange yanked him straight into his own mind, dragging him way deeper than he'd ever gone before. Out of nowhere, he heard a voice. It was one he hadn't heard in a decade, but somehow it sounded just like he remembered. Yuan glanced upward and noticed a huge bronze ring hanging in the air above. It looked just like the one he'd seen before, and for a second, he couldn't help but stare, trying to figure out what it was doing there. He spotted the copper ring he lost back when he was 8. It disappeared as soon as his blood touched it. His mind started to settle down, and that's when the bronze ring drifted down and snapped tight around his wrist. A bright light shot out, lighting up the mountains far away, almost like the sun coming up after a long night. Right then, Yuan noticed something he hadn't felt since he was a little kid. His spiritual energy was back. At the same time, Clever found himself caught up in a risky chase with a boar. Everyone said this type of boar was supposed to be harmless, but this one clearly hadn't gotten the memo. Its blunt armor made it look less scary, but the way it charged after Clever said otherwise. He dodged left and right, trying not to get cornered, barely keeping ahead as the boar kept coming at him. Yuan finally got the bronze ring to wake up after all those years, but he wasn't sure about it. The energy coming from it was barely there, and he wondered if it would actually do anything for him. Out of nowhere, the ring on his wrist lit up with a super bright glow. Suddenly, his eyes started to burn as a wave of energy rushed straight into them. It was intense, almost like his head was about to explode. He could barely process what was happening, and everything around him seemed to blur for a moment. All of a sudden, he could see something like a status panel floating next to the boar. It turned out the boar was just a regular Tier 3 beast, nothing too crazy. Meanwhile, Clever and didn't even have a tier at all, which made them seem way weaker compared to the boar. Yuan saw what was coming and figured out where it would go next. He shifted to the right, fast, just as the attack came in from the side. Just like he was told, Clever moved quick and dodged the hit, barely missing it. Yuan frowned, deep in thought. Dodging just wasn't enough. The difference in strength was way too big. He knew he needed more power if his contracted spirit was really going to stand by his side. The bronze ring started to react, almost like it understood what its owner wanted. The light coming from it matched up exactly with the glow around E. He watched closely, eyes wide, as something started to change right in front of him. It looked like they were about to level up or transform into something new, and he couldn't help but lean in, curious about what was going to happen next. He wondered if everything happening was because of the ring. Across the field, the blunt armored boar got even angrier as kept singing. You could see its irritation rise, every note making it more restless. The creature let out a furious roar and knocked both Clever and Clear off their feet, sending them flying back at least 10 meters. Yuan understood that, even though his creatures were close to evolving, they still didn't stand a real chance against a Tier 3 beast. The difference in strength was just too much. Clever sprinted down the street, his heart pounding as the braised meat monster chased after him. He could barely keep his thoughts straight. All he knew was that thing was way too strong for him to handle. Behind him, E was scrambling to keep up, glancing over at Yuan with panic written all over his face, hoping for any idea of what to do next. The whole situation felt out of control, and nobody had a plan. Yuan noticed right away where the blunt armored boar was weakest. Didn't have to say much, just making some noise was enough to get the boar to focus on him. Didn't waste a second, she just went for it, raising her voice and singing as loud as she could. The boar winced, clearly hurting, and Yuan, who was used to hearing that sound all the time, just covered his ears. There wasn't much else he could do. In just a few seconds, the boar locked onto and went after him, ignoring everyone else. Right then, it clicked for her. She realized what her master was doing, using her as bait so could catch a breather. Yuan's eyes lit up as he spotted an opportunity. He nodded at He Ning, signaling him to turn and go for the creature's eyes, hoping they could finally get an advantage. E9 tried to flap her wings and pull off a move, but nothing happened. Her body just wouldn't respond, no matter how hard she tried. Yuan finally got his spiritual energy back, but his mind still felt pretty drained. He just didn't have enough focus left to pull off any skills right now. He held on to the bronze ring with both hands, not wanting to let go. He was hoping for just a few more seconds, his knuckles turning white as he hung there, pushing himself to hold out as long as possible. Right away, could feel energy rushing back into her, filling her up. She flapped her wings fast, and a bunch of feathers flew everywhere, making it tough for the boar to see what was going on. The beast couldn't see anything, and came to a shaky stop. Yuan notices what's happening right away. He catches on fast and knows this is his chance. Now his attention shifts to the spot, ready to make his move. Clever swung his claws hard, leaving deep scratches on the boar's nose. Blood flew up bright red against the air. Right after the ambush, he didn't waste a second. He jumped back fast, making sure he was far enough so the creature couldn't reach him. Was out of breath, looking over at Yuan for an answer. Yuan just smiled a little, letting them know things turned out all right. They'd actually managed to pull it off, getting rid of the threat together. Right after he spoke, Yuan's knees buckled and he dropped to the ground, completely out cold. The armored boar, confused and hurt, spun around and took off, running fast and desperate to get away. The car rolled to a stop outside the park, pulling up right in front of an old guy in a wheelchair. The old man sat with a red and white rabbit resting on his lap, his hand moving slowly through its fur. He glanced around, noticing something was off. It didn't make sense for a blunt armored boar to show up in a place like this. Next to him, the woman's eyes went wide, caught off guard by what just happened. There was a single feather on the boar's head, just like the one from Yuan. Her face lost all its color. She turned to the old man, letting him know she had to go find Yuan right away. The old man caught on fast and nodded, telling her to get moving and come back safe. He gave the rabbit one last soft pat, thinking to himself that he'd probably need its help again someday. Right then, Yuan found himself yanked back into his spiritual sea again. He found himself back in that strange place again. He'd been walking through here ever since his first weird dream, but he couldn't tell how much time had actually passed. Looking around, he thought about how someone had helped him out, sharing their power with him when things got rough before. The area around him was kind of small, maybe the size of a classroom, and everything looked foggy, almost see-through. He started to wonder if this was actually the inside of some spirit creature or something. He looked down at the bronze ring on his wrist, trying to figure out what it could do. The weight of it felt strange, and he wondered if this was really his new power. A second later, a status window popped up in front of him. It showed space, grade 1, and said the quality was just ordinary. There were 2 mysterious skills listed. One of them, called True Data, could turn confusing stuff into numbers he could actually understand. The other, Steady Mind, was a passive ability that helped him keep calm and not get messed up by bad thoughts or weird mental effects. As he kept scrolling, he spotted a note. It mentioned that the bronze ring could be some kind of divine relic, or maybe even something rare and mysterious. The spirit lock was a special trait with 4 main features. First, it let someone keep spirit creatures safe inside it, almost like a hidden home for them. But there was a catch. The creatures inside couldn't be stronger than the ring itself. As the spirits grew stronger, the ring did too, leveling up along with them. And each time the ring leveled up, it made room for one more creature to stay inside. Yuan scrolled through the trait descriptions and his smile faded. That's when it hit him. He could only team up with one spirit beast for now. If he wanted more, he'd have to level up the one he had first. Taking care of low-level spirits was already expensive. Even someone with a ton of money could run out fast. Yuan didn't have anything close to that kind of cash. He shook his head, thinking things could be worse. At least he could sense his spiritual power again. It wasn't much, but it felt like something was finally changing. Maybe this was the first step forward. He could barely make out Aunt's voice from next door. She sounded really worried, asking the doctor why he still hadn't woken up when they said it was just that he was tired. When Yuan finally woke up, he saw Yin and Clever pressing their little heads against his cheeks. He sat up, managed a small smile, and gave them a reassuring pat. He wanted them to know he was all right. The doctor standing at the door looked way less tense now. Everyone in the room had been seriously freaked out. Still, just to make sure everything was fine, the doctor wanted to run another check. Yuan wanted to say no, but Aunt didn't give him the chance. She pointed out that he'd been gone almost 10 hours and needed to take care of himself. Even something minor could get worse if he didn't handle it early. Uncle Lee and Aunt had always looked out for the siblings, making sure they were okay. But when it came to Yuan's deal with, he kept it to himself. He figured it was better if nobody else knew about it right now. The clear pond carp, a spirit beast known for helping people recover from rough times, let out a gentle green light. Right away, Yuan felt his mind snap back to full strength, like he'd just woken up from the best nap ever. The doctor let out a quick laugh, acting like everything was normal. He checked one last time, then got ready to leave, mentioning that his wife was probably waiting for him to come home for dinner. As soon as the doctor stepped out, a big rabbit with a lunchbox casually bounced into the room. Uncle Lee had cooked something special just for him, putting in extra effort like he always did. Aunt, half serious but mostly joking, let him know that if he didn't actually want it, he could just leave it. It was one of those moments where you could tell she cared, even if she pretended not to. When Yuan heard her voice, he knew better than to argue. He just nodded and opened the lunchbox, doing what he was told without making a fuss. But then something else caught his attention. There was a huge rabbit lying right next to Aunt's legs, way bigger than any rabbit he'd seen before. He noticed Uncle Lee's rabbit was different from the others. While most of the rabbits bounced around and made noise, this one always kept to itself, staying quiet and calm. It never acted playful like the rest. He looked at the status panel, expecting to see something helpful, but all he got were rows of question marks. It didn't even show up as a fear rabbit, which was weird. The part that usually listed traits was blocked off. It had 2 sets of question marks, like it was hiding something important. A few days later, Yuan headed out for his regular morning run. Right away, he noticed something was off. His chest felt tight, and every breath seemed harder than usual. Even though he tried to keep his pace, he just couldn't find his rhythm. Ever since he left the hospital, he'd been trying to jog for an hour every day, but his body still felt weak. Without any spiritual power left and being this out of shape, he knew jobs that involved fighting were probably off the table. Civilian work seemed like the only real option now. Right then, Aunt showed up, pushing Uncle Lee in his wheelchair after their trip to the market. She noticed Yuan, who was already out and about, getting some early morning exercise. Aunt seemed pretty cheerful, her energy standing out in the quiet morning. Yuan looked down at his skinny arms, giving them a quick flex. He grinned to himself, thinking it was important to stay in shape, even if it wasn't much. Right as he was talking, something strange happened. This window just appeared in front of his eyes, right above Uncle Lee's leg. It showed a bunch of info. The name was Bone Rot Plague Origin, then something called Worm, and the rank was platinum or higher. It also mentioned that this thing was both a poison and some kind of curse mixed together. The worm gave up its own life deep inside the host's body, turning itself into a nasty, bone-eating infection. Uncle Lee had somehow trapped all that poison inside his own leg, keeping it from spreading anywhere else. Knowing this, it was clear his spirit profession ranked pretty high, at least king class, maybe even better. That would also explain why his rabbit was still recovering. So this was the truth? Uncle Lee had some serious power under that calm look, and he'd been keeping it quiet all along. The couple said their goodbyes. Aunt looked at Yuan and told him to call her if anything happened. She also made sure he knew not to take care of everything by himself if CI needed to pay any fees. Yuan was honestly touched. Uncle Lee had always been there for him and his sister, taking care of them whenever they needed help. Now, seeing Uncle Lee hurt, Yuan really wanted to do something in return. If only he could fix that injury and pay back some of that kindness. Yuan got home after a long day, completely wiped out. He didn't even bother setting up his stall this time. He just wanted to crash and take it easy. He paused for a second, realizing something had changed. Overnight, the green vine looked different. It seemed stronger, and the leaves looked way healthier than before. It was like the plant had leveled up while everyone was asleep. Yesterday, the stone was just regular, nothing special. Now, staring at it, he started to wonder if his spiritual energy hadn't just disappeared, but maybe got pulled in by the spirit and helped it level up. He knew he had to check if this thing actually worked, so he decided to make it harder. This time, he picked Lily, who was known for her healing skills, to see how it would handle someone like her. He put his hands on the plant and focused, sending energy into it. Pretty quickly, the plain green vine changed, turning into a rare Lily. Now it even had 2 new healing powers unlocked. A normal calm Lily already goes for a decent price. But when someone finds one that's elite and has special skills, the profit shoots way up, like 10 times more. He couldn't hold back his excitement. He ran upstairs, barely watching his step, and burst into the room. He shook Clever and trying to wake them up fast. Whatever he just saw, he needed them to see it right now. Clever didn't waste a second and jumped right into his arms. Both master and had changed, kind of like they leveled up. Clever's memory just got way better. Before, he could only remember 1 piece of braised meat at a time, but now he could picture 30 without a problem. Had changed a lot, turning into a spirit beast built for battle. Her singing wasn't just beautiful anymore. It packed some serious power now. Yuan pulled Clever in for a tight hug and couldn't stop laughing. He was pumped. Finally, his hidden abilities were kicking in. This could be his big break the moment everything changed. Meanwhile, just stood there, blinking and looking confused. He had no idea what Yuan was so excited about. Yuan stopped for a second, and his smile slipped away. He realized there was more to this than just making money. Evolving a spirit isn't something just anyone can do. It's super tough, and most people never manage it on their own. Only a small number ever actually pull it off. Usually getting a spirit to evolve wasn't easy. It took a ton of rare stuff and spirit herbs, and creators had to use up a lot just to even get close. Even after all that effort, there was still no promise it would actually work. He looked at what he'd done and knew it was all him. No help, just his own strength. But deep down, he could already imagine the trouble if people found out. Standing out always made you a target, and he wasn't looking to get crushed for it. He knew he wasn't strong enough to look after himself yet. There was no way he could just let this secret out. If he wanted to use his new ability without getting into trouble, he had to take things slow. First, he needed to become a certified creator. Maybe that would help him blend in. Staying unnoticed was the only way to keep things from going wrong. Right at that moment, Clever's voice pulled Yuan out of his thoughts. He realized his phone was buzzing. It was I calling. That's when it hit him. Today was the big day his sister was supposed to get her first spirit beast. He picked up the phone as soon as it rang. It had been a couple of days since he'd last heard from her. She wanted to know if her big brother was doing any better. Yuan couldn't help but smile. Things were starting to look up for him, way better than how things used to be. He even thought about tackling the backyard today, something he hadn't wanted to do in a long time. I just sat there, not moving at all. She was totally caught off guard. It hadn't hit her before. Her brother really was different now. She sounded nervous, her words shaky from concern. She knew he didn't have any spiritual power, so she couldn't figure out how he'd deal with something like this. She told him not to even think about going out back and wanted him to wait until she got home. Yuan let out a quiet laugh. He brushed off the task, saying it was just some light cleaning. Nothing too tough for him now. He wanted to remind his younger brother that he was stronger these days and could handle it. Then he brought up the promise they had made, pushing his brother to focus on studying and not let his potential go to waste. For a moment, everything went quiet. I gave a small nod, showing he understood. She held her phone tight in her hand. She was determined not to mess things up for her brother. The story moved over to C's academy. She was just getting started there, with her own challenges waiting for her. The homeroom teacher stood at the front of the classroom, making sure everyone understood how important it was to choose their first spirit contract. He pointed out that having a strong, high-ranked spirit mattered a lot, but what really made a difference was the spirit master's own level. In the end, how well a spirit fought in battle depended depended just as much on the person as it did on the spirit itself. Every combat style works best with certain spirit types. If someone tries to make a contract with a spirit that doesn't match their main strength, things might not go as planned. Sometimes the contract just falls apart. Other times it can mess with their mind, leaving them feeling drained or off balance. For guys working as artisans or weavers, it takes a long time to really get how spirit materials work together. They have to train for years just to make things run smoothly. But for students focused on combat like the ones in this class, it matters even more. If their contracted spirits don't work well together, things can get messy fast. In their world, having that perfect teamwork between spirits isn't just helpful, it's what keeps them ahead. After class ended, the teacher asked CI to stick around while everyone else filed out. Juicy Eye stood there, thinking hard about the spirit he was about to sign with. His family didn't have it easy, and he knew that all too well. But everyone could see that he had serious talent. The Federation's Hunter Prodigy selection was just around the corner. This was a shot he couldn't let slip away. CI looked down and went quiet. She wanted to say something, but the words just wouldn't come out. While all this was going on, Yuan stayed busy the entire afternoon, working on leveling up 300 lilies to elite grade. That kind of haul could easily go for about 20,000 credits, which was more than enough to get Zaya solid, high-tier spirit. Out of nowhere, his communicator lit up with a number he didn't recognize. Yuan saw his phone light up and picked it up fast, expecting it to be a customer. On the other end of the call, a harsh voice exploded. It was clear someone was seriously mad about C's choices. They started grilling her guardian, questioning if they even knew what C was up to. The person on the phone couldn't believe she was actually going after a gray beetle, a creature that pretty much everyone saw as useless and weak. With all the talent C had, it felt like a total waste to them, and they just couldn't stay quiet about it. Yuan recognized it right away. It was just a regular insect spirit, nothing special, barely worth 200 credits. The thing couldn't really do anything useful and was only around to get eaten by stronger spirits. The teacher's voice got a little gentler, but he still held his ground. Noticed that her spiritual energy lined up with defense-type spirits, which almost never happened. Getting this right was a big deal. For her first contract, she'd need an elite-grade defense spirit, something that could change her life for good. Yuan paused for a second, thinking about how much an elite-grade spirit beast actually cost. He knew it would set him back at least 100,000 Federation credits, which was a lot. Even so, he didn't hesitate for long. He decided he'd handle it and made up his mind to get CI a solid spirit beast within the next couple of days, no matter what. After the call ended, he just stood there looking at all the green vines lined up in front of him. His mind started racing. The clock was ticking, and he didn't have much time left. Every vine had to be leveled up to elite grade, no skipping steps. He needed to trade them off for a high-quality defense spirit, something strong enough to protect his sister. Yuan pushed himself hard, skipping meals and barely sleeping, just so his little sister could connect with the best first spirit beast out there. He used all the spiritual energy he had, not holding anything back. Thanks to his non-stop effort, more than 20 regular green vines turned into powerful elite plants, one after another. After finishing up, he headed to the spirit beast market, ready to trade what he had for a stronger creature. The market was crowded with people trying to make a quick buck, and not all of them were honest. Yuan knew the risks, so before he left, he made sure the copper ring on his wrist was hidden under his sleeve. Yuan looked at Clever, almost double-checking if it really wanted to come with him. Clever stood there, looking extra proud, acting like it would never stay behind. Negotiating and getting involved was just what Clever did now. Yuan let out a sigh. Ever since Clever had evolved, it hadn't lost a single argument. It just wouldn't back down from anything. A cart rolled down the street, pulled by a scruffy donkey that most people around here used for cheap rides across town. About 100 years back, everything changed when spiritual energy started coming back into the world. Machines that used to run on steel and metal slowly disappeared because new creatures, powered by that energy, did the job better. People didn't think of it as going backwards. It just made sense. The new spirit tech rides worked smoother and saved everyone money, so no one really missed the old machines. Yuan hopped onto the cart with Clever. As the cart picked up speed, Clever struggled to stay on the seat, nearly sliding right off. The driver shot a quick look over his shoulder as he made his way to the spirit market. He seemed pretty sure something good was waiting there today. Yuan noticed and raised his eyebrow, curious if some fresh stuff had just come in. The driver let out a small laugh, looking over at the passenger. He seemed surprised that anyone could have missed what happened just outside Lower County. 2 days ago, a dimensional rift had opened up about 30 miles away, and it was all over the news. The Purple Thorn Guards battled non-stop for 2 days and nights, pushing themselves to the limit. They didn't back down until every last beast from the first wave was gone. By the end, things were finally calm, and the area was safe again. There were still 3 squads hanging around near the rift, making sure everything stayed under control. The driver mentioned that the dimensional rift showed up right beside a base where they raised spirit beasts. Most of the creatures there didn't make it, and the ones that survived were pretty messed up. Some workers managed to get away, and now they're trying to sell the injured beasts at the market. Clever's eyes lit up as he finally understood how that stubborn armored boar had managed to get away earlier. The driver started laughing, knowing exactly what was going on. Turns out a bunch of wild boars had broken loose. He'd actually caught one the day before, right before things got wild. Once the auction kicked off, it seemed like the whole village rushed over, trying to get in on the action. Any boars that didn't get picked up ended up getting smoked into jerky. Yuan laughed and gave a thumbs up, showing he was pretty impressed. In his head, he thought about checking out the stalls nearby. He figured if people were selling injured beasts, he might be able to score some good deals. When he got to the spirit market, the place was already packed. People were everywhere, moving through the busy aisles. It was way more crowded than he expected, with everyone talking and checking out the stalls. The whole market seemed louder and busier than normal, with energy in the air that made it hard not to look around and take it all in. Clever could barely sit still, super hyped about what was coming up. He wanted to take charge of the deal, already thinking about what kind of beast they were going to get and how much money they could spend. Yuan, staying chill as always, let him know they were looking for a top-tier defense spirit, and they had about 100,000 credits to work with. Clever couldn't believe what he just heard. 100 grand? They only had around 20,000 saved up. Yuan seemed pretty calm about it, though, almost like he'd expected this. He had a plan: sell the green vines and lilies they'd worked on last night. Clever wasn't happy about it. He thought the whole thing sounded sketchy and didn't trust the deal at all. Yuan moved down the rows of stalls, noticing how each spirit beast gave off its own vibe. Some of them drew him in, while others just didn't click with him at all. One in particular caught his eye. It glowed softly, almost like he'd seen it before. It felt strangely familiar, and he found himself drawn to it more than any of the others. Carp, nether orchid, snow lily, thousand gem bloom. These were the types he could work with. His abilities stretched pretty far, from healing to support and even plants. It all seemed to link together for him somehow. Though was different. His strength was all about defense. He was so deep in his own head that everything around him faded into the background. Clever was locked in with a vendor, bargaining hard over the price of a hard-hide rabbit. He didn't waste any time, quickly knocking the price down from $80,000 to $60,000. Yuan apologized to the stall owner right away. He knew his 100-question beast had gotten too excited and caused a bit of a scene. Meanwhile, Clever looked annoyed. He thought if he'd been allowed to push just a little more, he could have knocked the price down by another 10 or even 20,000. Yuan let out a sigh. He wasn't against haggling, but he knew they hadn't even looked at the other stalls yet. In his mind, it made sense to check around first and compare prices before making any decisions. They walked over to another booth where a bonsai turtle was on display. The turtle looked tough and had a solid shell, clearly built for defense, but it was still pretty low level and moved at a snail's pace. Yuan glanced at it, knowing he didn't have the patience or time to train something that slow. He quickly decided to move on, looking for something that fit his needs better. After that, they came across a shadow armadillo. It was supposed to be a top-tier defense spirit, but honestly, it wasn't much better than the hard-hide rabbit. Its skills were just as boring, and it was super shy, definitely not the type that could keep CI safe. Yuan checked out a bunch more stalls, but none of the beasts he saw impressed him as much as that first rabbit. He noticed something up ahead, a steel cage just sitting there. Inside the box, there were 3 little lambs, each with huge curling horns that looked way too big for their small bodies. Horn rams stand out among the best spirits. Even when they're just lambs, everyone already knows their top quality. Yuan rushed over to the vendor, pulling out his phone like he was about to transfer some serious cash. He offered a pretty big number for one of the horn rams, hoping the seller would go for it. Yuan's heart was beating a little faster than usual. He really wanted that ram, and he didn't want anyone else to snag it first. The old man glanced up from his newspaper, narrowing his eyes. He paused for a second, then reached into his pocket for his phone, needing to call his wife before doing anything else. While the vendor was busy with his phone, Clever kept thinking about what he saw online yesterday. Horned rams usually sold for about 5 grand, and even the rare ones barely reached 9. Yuan just gave a small smirk at that, almost like he knew something Clever didn't. It was the kind of look that said, "You'll get it someday," and Clever couldn't help but feel like he was missing the point. Before Yuan could even finish thinking, the stall owner just stared at him and threw out a price: 120,000 credits, no haggling. Yuan's expression changed right away. That was way too much, he thought. The price was so high it felt like the guy was just trying to rip him off. As they walked off, Yuan let out a sigh. He could tell there weren't any good defense-type beasts left around. Clever just nodded, not really sure what else they could do. Maybe it was time to head back for the horn ram. If it was for CI, it seemed like the right move. Right then, the butcher at the stall next door called out that he was sold out for the day. There wasn't any meat left. Some people in the crowd got annoyed and started complaining. They asked about the injured spirit beasts the butcher still had and pushed him to just use those. Yuan's eyes suddenly brightened. He noticed the injured spirit beasts nearby, and though he was interested, Clever just let out a low groan. It was almost like Clever was begging Yuan not to get any weird ideas, especially about making stew right then and there. The butcher lifted his hands, looking kind of sorry. He let everyone know there wouldn't be any slaughtering happening today. The crowd realized they'd been waiting around for nothing. But the butcher mentioned something else. There were still 3 injured beasts left inside. If anyone wanted one, it was all theirs, and they'd get to keep whatever they made from it. The crowd started drifting away. Most people just couldn't pay for a constructor to fix up a badly hurt spirit beast, so they didn't stick around. The butcher spotted Yuan hanging around, and almost without thinking, just let him know he was completely out of meat and wasn't selling any more today. Yuan noticed right away that the man wasn't in a good mood. He kept his own voice calm and steady, wanting to keep things chill. Yuan wasn't interested in buying meat or causing any trouble. All he wanted was to check out the spirit beasts, curious about what made them special. While he talked, he secretly turned on calm mind skill. A soft, almost unnoticeable wave moved through the air, making everyone nearby feel a bit more relaxed. Without realizing it, people started to see him in a better light. The man's face relaxed right away. He told the kid not to stress and said he wasn't that old, just to call him brother. With a quick wave, he pointed to the back of the stall and motioned for the kid to follow. He mentioned there were still 3 hurt beasts inside, waiting to be checked out. Brother Yang pointed out the 2 web-spitting boars. At first glance, they looked totally normal from the front, but their stomachs had deep cuts. Judging by the injuries, they probably only had a couple of days left. Yuan glanced at their stats. Both were top level, sitting right at level 10. Everything looked perfect, and they were almost ready to level up again. He looked over the group, thinking that if none of them were hurt, each one would probably be worth around 30,000 credits on the internet. He let out a dry laugh. Control type and venom support beasts usually went for a good price, but looking at these 2, they wouldn't bring much. If someone was feeling generous, maybe the pair could get him 15 grand, but that was probably being optimistic. Yuan gave a friendly smile. He wanted both of the spirit beasts, but didn't have enough credits to pay for them. Instead of just giving up, he thought about making a trade, offering one of his own spirit beasts in exchange for another. Lumen let out a sigh as he thought about what was next. Once he got through handling these creatures, he planned to start over, building a new breeding base from scratch. Honestly, he didn't see beasts for trade making things any easier for him now. Even so, there was something about Kit. The way the kid acted made Lumen feel a bit of hope again, even when he'd pretty much given up on that. Yuan smiled a little. The idea of a breeding base got him thinking. He wondered what would happen if someone tried to trade for an elite green vine instead. Brother Yang raised his eyebrows. He noticed the green vine and realized it wasn't just any ordinary plant. This one looked special, something you hardly ever see. He started wondering just how good it actually was. Yuan stayed cool and sure of himself. He knew his stuff was top quality, and he didn't mind if anyone wanted to check it out in person. Brother paused for a second, running his hand over the tough skin of the bull standing next to him. Lately, elite green vines had been selling for twice as much as usual. That bull was the only one he had left, and he'd put everything into raising it. Now, with here, things were about to change. Yuan checked the bull's status screen, eyes scanning over the details. His eyes went wide with excitement. He spotted the rock horn bull, and his heart started racing. That beast was almost epic grade, just the kind CI needed for solid defense. He couldn't help but wonder what Brother would ask for it. Brother looked over at the bull, its horns snapped and body weak. He wasn't sure if this was a good idea. The bull looked like it could collapse any second, and he had his doubts about going through with it. Yuan stayed cool, not even flinching when the number popped up 200,000 credits. The guy just stopped in his tracks, completely caught off guard. He started wondering if the other person could actually fix that injury, or maybe he had someone powerful backing him up. All sorts of thoughts raced through his mind as he tried to figure out what was really going on. Yang blinked, not sure he'd heard right the first time. He hesitated, thinking there was no way that number was for real. The surprise made him pause, trying to process what he'd just heard. Yuan nodded with confidence. He was sure about what he'd said. He believed the green vines were reliable and wouldn't let Brother down. Dug around in his bag and then flashed a quick grin. He figured if someone was buying all 3, there was no point sticking around any longer. So he started to pack up his stuff, ready to check out those green vines his customer was talking about. He was glad he remembered to bring a containment box. Now he could pack up the rock horn bull along with the web-spitting boars, making things way easier. The box was built by Ostrich Logistics. It was a high-tech case that could shrink spirit beasts and make them weigh almost nothing, so moving them around was easy and safe. Clever just stood there, totally blown away. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. In his head, he wondered why they'd never had something like this before. Yuan just looked tired and a little annoyed. The reason was simple. They'd never had the cash for stuff like this. Out of nowhere, a bright blue light shot out from the box and covered the bull. In seconds, the bull vanished, getting pulled right into the box like it was nothing. Clever stared at the box, kind of amazed as he tapped it. He couldn't believe something that big had squeezed inside. Stuff like this magic tech always caught him off guard. guard, let out a small laugh. He looked at the containment box and recognized it right away. It was only copper tier. He knew what that meant for the bull inside. It was stuck at copper rank, no chance of getting stronger or moving up. While he talked, he reached out his hand and called over a creature covered in black and red scales. This was the lizard. Even though its name sounded intense, it actually didn't have any fire powers at all. Stood there, a proud look on his face as he glanced at his beast partner. He looked like he was waiting for someone to notice what the creature could do. The lizard beside him, which he had raised himself, looked even tougher up close, its scales showing off a faint, cool glow. Seemed pretty pleased with himself, almost like he was silently asking if anyone thought his work was impressive. Yuan walked around the creature, checking out every single scale. The beast seemed a little embarrassed and moved away, not really used to the attention. For a copper-tier beast, this one stood out. Its fire toxin ability could really come in handy during a fight, giving it some extra options most creatures at this level just don't have. Noticed something in the kid that caught him off guard. The way the kid handled things didn't seem like beginner's luck. It was more like he knew exactly what he was doing, almost as if he'd been studying this stuff for years. Started thinking maybe this kid was just naturally gifted, or maybe someone had been secretly teaching him all along. Either way, felt pretty good about putting his trust in him. He zoned out, his mind wandering. The vendors nearby looked pretty annoyed. Some glared over at what was happening, saying their hard-hide rabbits hadn't eaten a thing since that thing showed up. A few others joined in, clearly frustrated, making it obvious the whole scene was messing with their business. Yang let out a nervous laugh and waved for it to hurry up. He was clearly trying to keep things moving before anyone else started getting annoyed with him. Just wanted to get out of there before things got any more tense. The lizard jumped ahead and tore down the street, moving way faster than anyone expected. Strong winds slammed into Yuan, making it hard for him to breathe. For a second, it felt like the wind could actually pick him up and toss him away. The lizard moved fast, following Yuan's lead, and reached his place in no time. It slowed down and came to a stop right outside his house. Jumped off his beast, still laughing. Most people couldn't handle their first ride, but Yuan looked totally unfazed. He ran a hand through his messy hair and grinned, looking like he actually enjoyed the wild ride. Even though it was his first time riding something like that, he kept it cool. He waved inside, showing him around his place. It wasn't fancy, but Yuan didn't seem bothered by that. He wanted to feel welcome, acting like it was no big deal. As soon as walked in, he looked around the room. Everything looked way too normal for a constructor's workshop. It didn't match what he expected, and he started to wonder if he was in the right place. As soon as his eyes hit the shelf, he stopped in his tracks. He looked at the green vines, noticing how refined they were. These weren't just any plants. This was top-tier stuff. The kind you almost never see online, even if you're always scrolling through forums or rare item feeds. It was clear to him that someone with serious skills had to be behind this. Work like this doesn't just happen on its own. Yuan caught the look on the guy's face and just grinned. He wasn't stressed about how things would turn out. Earlier, he'd already worked some energy into the soil before everything started changing. Now, the roots below were packed in tight, way stronger than usual. Yang grabbed a leaf and broke it in two. Sticky sap oozed out, shiny in the light. He wasn't making anything up. These really were top-level plants. Maybe things were finally looking up for old Yang. Memories started coming back to him. He remembered all those times he tried to hire builders and got turned down. Every rejection hit hard, mostly because he never had the special materials they always wanted. Getting help from them usually means bringing some rare spirit materials, stuff way out of reach for someone like him. But if he could just get on this guy's good side, maybe things would start to look different. Yuan saw that was lost in thought. He nudged him back to reality, asking for his opinion. Snapped out of it and a grin spread across his face. He wasn't just satisfied, he was pumped. It was time to get down to business. Honestly, he looked at the pots and knew right away these were the kind of rare stuff everyone online would rush to buy. They were top quality, no doubt. He figured each one was worth about 30,000 credits, and was ready to grab 100 if that many were available. Clubber's eyes got huge as he started counting on his claws, trying to figure out what 100 times 30,000 even was. He struggled with the math, looking a bit lost, like he knew it was a big number but couldn't quite wrap his head around it. Yuan stayed cool on the outside, not showing much, but inside he was pumped. This was just what he needed to boost his spirit constructor rank faster than ever. He knew those green vines were totally worth all the work he'd put in. While all this was happening, Yang watched quietly, his mind running. The trade going on was huge, but he stayed cool, not giving anything away. It was hard to believe he was just some regular street vendor. The simple shop setup definitely seemed like something planned by someone behind the scenes. Yang looked over and wanted to know how long it would take to get things set up. He glanced at the younger guy, waiting for a straight answer, just wanting to get a sense of the timing. Yuan paused to figure out the timing. He'd need about 7 days total. Each pot would take him an hour, then there were a couple of days set aside to visit his sister with a gift. Even with some breaks, 7 days was already already cutting it close. Yang Ming's eyes started to water. 7 days. He couldn't believe it. It usually took 2 months to get something like this done. Maybe his luck was finally turning around. This kid must have some serious connections. After that, Yuan and Yang wrapped things up, swapping the web-spitting boars for the bull. Yang wanted to pay for all 70 pots right away, but Yuan just brushed it off. He told not to stress about it and said he could pay when he came back to pick them up in a week. Stacked the 20 pots of green vines, making sure they were secure before climbing onto his lizard. He couldn't help but smile. He'd finished right on time, 7 days flat. Without wasting any more time, he nudged the lizard forward and headed out, looking pretty satisfied with himself. Later on, Yuan headed out to the backyard and let the rock horn bull out of its box. Seeing the bull up close, with its broken horns and all those deep scars, even Yuan couldn't help but flinch. Clever and E couldn't help but stare eyes wide. That thing was massive, and it definitely wasn't something most people could just take home. The price alone made it seem impossible. Yuan, though, looked calm and even managed a small smile. He wasn't worried about all that right now. His focus was just on helping out. What happened after, he'd figure out later. He put his hand on the bull's side, focusing all his energy. The bull's breathing was weak, and it looked like it could fade away any second. About 10 minutes passed, and the creature's wounds started to heal up. Cuts slowly faded as its skin pulled back together, all because of that strange energy running through it. Yuan noticed what was happening and didn't waste any time. He pushed harder, sending even more energy through his hands, hoping it would be enough. Out of nowhere, the rock horn bull started shaking hard, looking like it was in real pain. A low, rough sound came from deep in its chest, making everyone tense up. The force hit Yuan's palms hard, almost knocking him off his feet. A few seconds passed, and suddenly the bull was trapped inside a see-through barrier that looked like it was made of glass. The whole thing shimmered with energy, almost buzzing with power. Anyone watching could tell right away this was what happened when a beast started to evolve to copper rank. Yuan didn't wait around. He pushed more spirit energy into the barrier, hitting it hard and giving it everything he had. After about 30 minutes, a thin crack slowly appeared on the surface. Suddenly, the whole barrier broke apart, like glass getting smashed. A strong blast shot out, pushing Clever and eating back fast. Yuan quickly turned on his true data skill, his eyes scanning the new info that popped up on the screen. The name was different now. Bull Ox. Its horns weren't the same as before. They curved forward, looking sharp and strong, like they were made just for smashing through whatever stood in front of it. After it leveled up from epic quality, 3 new traits popped up on the screen. Yuan's brow furrowed as he stared at the options in front of him. There were 3 choices, but he could only pick one. He paused, taking a moment to really think things through, not wanting to mess this up. The first trait, Trek, boosted stamina and made moving around easier. For a beast built for defense, though, it didn't really help much. The second creature's body was wrapped in thick, tough armor. It looked like it could take a serious hit without flinching. Its rough scales weren't just for show either. They could probably mess someone up pretty bad if it decided to charge. Out of all the abilities, pain absorption stood out the most to him. Whenever he got hurt, some of that pain would actually help him heal up a bit. Yuan checked out the tank, noticing how it seemed to get tougher every time it took a hit. He couldn't help but feel satisfied. This was exactly the kind of defense C needed for his setup. He didn't even stop to think. He just picked pain absorption like it was the only choice that made sense. The ox finished changing, its evolution done at last. The longer Yuan stared, the more he realized how solid this creature really was. With just the right traits and skills, it wasn't just about defense. It could actually hit hard while staying protected, kind of like a juggernaut in heavy gear. C stood there eyeing her new spirit beast. It really seemed like the perfect pick for her. Nobody would want to get on her bad side now. Clever cocked his head, still not sure how to feel about it. The whole thing felt kind of off, almost like something straight out of Beauty and the Beast. Yuan didn't bother paying attention to the guy. Right now, making sure his sister was okay was way more important than how anything looked. He just looked over and smirked, kind of teasing, as if to point out that technically the other guy was a beast too. Once the ox finished evolving, he could feel spirit energy building up inside him. The connection between him and the beast was obvious now. As the ox grew stronger, he noticed that the energy he got back from it also increased. The evolution almost wiped him out, leaving him barely holding on. He wondered what would happen if someone way stronger did this, especially with some next-level materials. The kind of creature they could build would probably be insane. Clever stood close by, giving it his best shot to lift the ox. He barely got it to budge before sweat started pouring down his face. This thing was just way too heavy for him. Yuan grabbed his phone and placed an order with Ostrich Express, choosing the fastest delivery and a top-tier route. The screen flashed with a special badge, grabbing his attention. He paused for a second, wondering if air order meant the package would actually fly over to him. As night settled in, the forest around Moonshine Hall got quiet and a little mysterious. The moonlight slipped through the branches, casting pale light on the ground and making everything look kind of silver and calm. A woman stood there, calm and focused, holding her hand out as a crystal vessel floated right right above her palm. A vine bird swooped by, making a quiet sound as it flew. It had a few little bundles hanging from its beak, looking like it had somewhere important to be. She dropped the 3 sets of materials into the crystal bowl. Right away, the stuff inside started to swirl around and stick together, giving off a soft, weird glow. The potion gave off a light herbal smell, kind of like when you walk outside after it rains and the grass still feels fresh. The woman raised her hand and carefully directed the strange, silvery blood from the beast into the crystal container. Right away, the smell in the air changed. It got stronger, almost heavy, like something old and dangerous had just started to wake up somewhere in the jungle. The energy in the air was so strong that even the 2 king-rank experts standing close by had to put up their shields just to be safe. Everyone could tell right away this was what a 5-star constructor could do. About 15 minutes later, finally came to a halt. She looked steady and collected, waiting for him to bring out the creature he wanted to level up. Let out a breath he'd been holding, finally feeling more at ease. Ling was right there next to him, looking pretty chill, almost like he knew things would turn out fine the whole time. Raised his hand fast, and suddenly this huge tiger-like beast appeared out of nowhere. He glanced at Lady, kind of grateful, knowing she was the reason the beast was there. Now, everyone realized that this massive creature was about to be the main focus. Snapped her wrist, and the red liquid in her palm suddenly turned to mist. It drifted through the air in a thin line, heading right for the beast's nose. The tiger rolled onto its side all of a sudden, letting out a loud roar that echoed through the air. Stopped in his tracks, unsure what just happened or if he'd made a mistake. Even with everything getting crazier, kept his cool. He didn't freak out or anything. The creature in front of them started to change, turning into something way stronger. People would probably start calling it a legend-class beast. Stepped forward, ready to connect with it, letting the transformation happen. The creature began rising up on its way to becoming a mythic type. His eyes widened with excitement. He bowed low to Lady, showing a ton of respect. In his mind, he knew he'd stick by her side no matter what came their way, ready to take on anything for her. Right while he was talking, the tiger's energy burst out all around him. Its transformation was done. The giant tiger could sense something different inside. It was stronger now, way stronger than before. It threw its head back and let out a massive roar that echoed everywhere. In that moment, nothing could touch it. It stood there, totally confident, like it owned the place. The loud noise startled a small white rabbit that had been sleeping close by. It opened its eyes, looked around, and didn't seem to care much about what just happened. The huge tiger stopped right away, its whole body shaking. It stayed completely quiet, not even making a peep. Glanced over at, wondering why he was trying so hard. The whole system for picking constructors was just way too strict. There was only one test every 3 years, and people could only move up 1 rank at a time. With rules like that, it seemed almost impossible for anyone with real talent to actually stand out. Paused for a moment, unsure. It slowly sunk in what Lady was saying. This year, the constructor exam wasn't going to be like before. Now, guys could go for more than 1 rank at the same time. Anyone who clears the first trial in under 2 hours gets to skip 3 life class tests and move straight to the rank 2 evaluation. This new rule kicks off at the Forbidden City. Gave a deep O, showing he got the message and was ready to follow her lead. Next to them, City Lord Ling tilted her head, trying to figure things out. It looked like she was thinking about how the Federation's exams weren't turning out any talented constructors these days. Even just getting the hang of a single rune seemed pretty rare now. Shook her head with a small smile. She felt like this was something she needed to handle on her own. Jun and Chef Lord had already picked their apprentices, and as someone who'd earned the 5-star constructor title, didn't want to fall behind those two. She saw it as a point of pride. No way she'd let the older guys get ahead. Ling's eyes got big when he realized Lady was about to pick someone to be her disciple. His tone changed and the air felt heavier. He explained that the dimensional tide was getting closer, and the Forbidden City was right at the heart of the most dangerous rift zone. As the city lord, it was on him to look after the city. Every rift needed to be checked constantly, and there was no room for mistakes. The pressure was real, and the responsibility weighed on his shoulders. Ling stood tall and gave a sharp salute. He wanted her to know she could count on him. As long as he was there, the Forbidden City wasn't going anywhere. While everyone else was down on the ground, Yuan was up in the sky, riding his black-winged falcon. The huge bird glided high above the mountains and open fields, with the moonlight making everything below look kind of unreal. The air up there was cold and sharp, but Yuan barely noticed. He kept his eyes on the land, focused on where he needed to go, letting the wind rush past as he flew through the night. The pilot shot a quick look at Yuan and caught the color draining from his face. He could tell the kid was having a rough time. The pilot figured things would get better once they broke through the clouds and the flight leveled out. He laughed to himself, watching the small creature from the shore bounce around with tons of energy. It was kind of funny. Too bad they already had too much stuff with them, or else he probably would let Tag come along for the ride. Honestly, if hadn't stepped in, Clever would just shown up anyway. It didn't matter what anyone else said, he was that set on going. Yuan tried to hold it together, even though his stomach stomach was turning. He managed a weak smile, pretending everything was cool. Deep down, he told himself it wasn't the end of the world. Be another shot at this. The pilot flashed a quick grin, giving a small nod as they closed in on their destination. He glanced over, hinting that something cool was about to happen. Down below, the city started to come into view, and even though the height made most people uneasy, the sight was honestly worth it. Not far from the Forbidden City, the view from up here was something people would probably post about if they could. The moon was out and shining tonight, making it way easier to see everything. On nights when it was darker, it was almost impossible to make anything out. It just didn't feel as cool then. Yuan glanced down as the dizziness slowly wore off. With aura steadying him, he realized just how different the view was up here. It wasn't something he'd seen before, kind of unreal, almost like being in his own adventure post. As soon as he spoke, something shifted in his head. It was like energy started building up, swirling around. He wondered if this meant a dual rune was starting to form. There was no way he could be wrong. This was the will rune of mountains, known for standing tough and never backing down. Most of the time, only certain creatures who could handle its power would be able to use it. The pilot glanced back and saw Yuan sitting there, quiet and lost in thought. Yuan shook himself out of it and nodded, trying to look relaxed. He glanced out the window, noticing the endless stretch of mountains below. Time seemed to slow down up here, and he started to wonder how much longer it would be until they finally landed in Jing City. The pilot figured they'd probably land by morning. He noticed the kid looked pretty queasy earlier, so he decided to take it easy and slow the plane down. Yuan pressed his hand over his mouth, trying to keep it together as his stomach twisted. Even though he felt sick, he didn't want to slow anyone down. He just wanted everyone to keep moving as fast as they could. At the academy, the bell rang, signaling the end of class. The classroom buzzed as everyone gathered their stuff, glancing at each other with confused looks. Most of the guys expected today would be about making their first contracts, but instead, the teacher told them to head out to the training field. Nobody really understood what was up, and you could sense the questions hanging in the air as they shuffled out, backpacks in hand. Word was going around that everything was getting moved up because of the 100 seeds from Jing City selection. The school wanted to track down the most talented students as soon as possible, so they rushed all the plans. His phone buzzed with a message from a friend who went to a different academy. Turns out, the same weird thing was going on over there too. A tough-looking instructor walked into the hall. Today's session was set up to be both the seniors' combat class and the first big field drill for the first-year battle group. Once everyone finished setting up their contracts, they'd have to fight in pairs, with partners picked at random. The instructor reminded everyone to keep the fights clean, no moves that could actually kill someone. The girl glanced at her friend, looking uneasy. They were about to go up against some third-year students, and she couldn't help but worry. She watched as CI focused on that gray beetle, clearly thinking about making a deal with it. The tension in the air was obvious, and everyone seemed a little on edge. CI glanced at the gray beetle sitting in her hand. She gave a small, determined nod, her mind made up. Out on the battlefield, a glider squirrel darted around, trying to stay ahead of a steel-armored boar that wouldn't let up. The squirrel weaved left and right, scrambling to dodge the boar's heavy steps as it charged after him, making the ground shake with every stomp. It was match 8. The first year's glider squirrel bylaid, scampering off before anything could really happen. That meant the third year won by default, and the instructor didn't waste any time announcing it. Up in the stands, a girl couldn't hide how mad she was. She watched the match, thinking it wasn't fair at all. Her team had barely put together their contracts, while the others already knew how to fight. The whole thing looked totally lopsided. She locked eyes on CI, hoping he'd step up and prove everyone wrong, wanting her team to show everyone what they could really do. It was time for match 9. The instructor called out, getting everyone's attention. Both guys stepped forward, getting into position and waiting for the signal to start. The air felt a bit tense. You could tell everyone was watching closely, curious to see what would happen next. The guy stood there with a confident grin, looking like he was totally set to go. People in the crowd started talking quietly when they saw Phone. Everyone seemed to know who he was. His uncle had a job at the Constructor Guild headquarters, and rumors said was aiming for one of the 100 seeds in Jing City. Most thought he was only a couple of wins away from making it. Some guys also mentioned CI she was expected to be one of the favorites, but word was spreading that her spirit beast wasn't living up to the hype. Phone couldn't help but smile even wider. The timing couldn't have been better. The guild just dropped news about the new selection cycle. It was basically his lucky day, and he knew he was about to rack up some easy wins. The usual goal of 100 seeds didn't matter much anymore. Deep down, he already pictured the day when even Lady would recognize who he was. He let out a quiet laugh, barely loud enough for anyone to notice. Looking down at the gray beetle, he couldn't help but think about how some people just can't catch a break, no matter how much skill they have. In his mind, it didn't matter how talented this new kid was. Without any money, things were only going to get tougher. Juicy Eye held her spirit stone close, determined not to let go. Even though all she had was this little beetle, she wasn't about to give up. Right when she was about to take a step, her teacher stopped her, telling her to hang on. The instructor walked over with a yellow dog by his side. He let the guy know he couldn't do much, but pointed out the spotted hound was actually a top-tier animal. He figured it'd be a waste to use his special skill on just an average buck. Juicy's eyes relaxed, ready to show some gratitude, but before he could, a huge bird shadow slid over the sky above him. Yuan dropped down from above, landing solidly on the ground. He glanced at his teacher, looking a little proud. He'd brought the sea spirit beast with him, just like he was supposed to. He rushed over to his sister, still breathing hard from running. He was just glad he'd made it before anything went wrong. CI had already set up the contract, and for now, he just hoped things would work out. The teacher looked uncertain, clearly not sure if this spirit could be trusted. He started thinking about other options, like the spotted hound, even though that one wasn't exactly well behaved. Phone folded his arms and rolled his eyes like he'd heard this all before. He clearly didn't care what anyone chose. Gray beetle, spotted hound. It was all the same to him. He looked at the Power Lord beetle, the one he'd raised ever since it was tiny. Out of all the bugs in the room, he was sure none of them could touch his. The instructor started sweating, realizing what he was looking at. That was a beetle, and it was huge, big enough to count as copper rank already. He knew right away that even a tough spotted hound wouldn't stand a chance if it got hit by that thing. I noticed the box her brother was holding, and her eyes got big. She recognized it right away. It was a copper-ranked containment box, something you don't see every day. She started wondering how her brother managed to pay for something like that. The thought crossed her mind that maybe he'd done something crazy, like selling their shop just to get his hands on it. Yuan gave a gentle smile and ruffled Cee's hair, trying to reassure her. He wanted her to stay focused on what she needed to do right now. He believed in her and knew she could handle it. CII took a deep breath and opened the box, trying to keep calm like he always did when things got tense. Her voice shook a little, but her eyes showed she meant business. She wasn't about to let everything he did count for nothing. Suddenly, a bright symbol lit up under her shoes. That was the sign. The contract ritual was starting. A huge iron-horned rhino stepped out from behind CI. Its metal skin shined in the sunlight, catching everyone's attention right away. Phone Lixing let out a short laugh, barely bothered by the showy entrance. He watched without much interest, thinking that all the money in the world wouldn't help someone who didn't know how to fight. The expensive gear might have looked impressive, but to him, it just seemed like a waste of a rich family's cash. Lifted her hand, her eyes locked in and serious. She wasn't here for anyone's pity, and she was ready to prove it. In that moment, the rhino stood out, setting the stage for whatever was coming next. The instructor's eyes went wide when he spotted the copper-rank iron-horn rhino. It was a pure throwback, which was pretty rare. For defense-type beasts, this one was considered one of the best. Just the horns on its head could sell for around 700,000 credits. Yuan stood off to the side, letting out a quiet sigh. He watched the scene play out, thinking to himself that not everything needed to be about money. The rhino charged straight at the Power Lord beetle, its horn smashing hard into the beetle's tough, armored head. The impact echoed through the air, making everyone watching tense up. Phone Lixing just smirked, thinking the guy was way too naive. In his mind, defense types really shouldn't be running straight into a fight like that. He snapped his fingers with confidence, like he was about to prove something big. He was ready to show what real power looked like. Suddenly, his whole vibe changed as he called out his boss move. Power Lord Beetle, horn smash. The beetle let out a loud roar and charged forward. Its huge horn sliced through the air, moving so fast and hard it looked like it could smash anything in its way. Juicy Eye tightened his fists, focusing all his energy. Across from him, Rhino stood steady, ready for whatever was coming. Foam lifted an eyebrow, looking a bit impressed. Seeing her pull off spirit flow so soon after making the contract, he started to think maybe she actually had some potential. She clearly wasn't as lost as he first thought. The instructor let out a breath, finally relaxing. That could have gone bad. Just one more push and would cross the line. She still rushed in without thinking, and it was clear she needed more time actually fighting, not just practicing moves. Yuan looked concerned. He could tell something was off. CI seemed to know exactly what the Rhino could do, even though she'd just formed a contract with it. That meant her first attack wasn't random. She was testing things out, playing it smart. The Power Lord Beetle moved around the Iron Horn Rhino, its legs tossing up dust while everyone watched, unsure of what was going on. The beetle just kept going in circles, not really attacking, and the Rhino looked too bulky and slow to keep up. The crowd started to wonder what the beetle was planning, since the Rhino was obviously struggling to react. Phone just rolled his eyes and gave a quick, annoyed smirk. Seriously, what did they expect? Of course an attack beast would act aggressive on the move. It circles around, looking for the right moment to strike and finish things. He shot CI a quick, confident grin. It was the kind of look that said he knew something big was about to go down, and he wondered if she was ready for what was coming her way. Chu CI pressed her lips together, tense as she watched Rhino struggle. The iron horn was tough, but Rhino's hooves kept sinking deeper into the dirt every time the beetle charged at him. She just hoped Rhino could keep standing.
Lately, I've had a strong addiction to watching manhwa and manga recap videos. Every single day, I find myself binging one after another, losing hours and days doing absolutely nothing productive. And honestly, it's getting out of hand. So, maybe we can make these viral videos too. I mean, look at the views, the growth, the community these creators are building. It looks simple, right? But that's a trap. You go down this endless rabbit hole, spending money, losing sleep, hiring editors and writers from Fiverr and Upwork, and still feel like you've been robbed. Because don't forget how emotional the YouTube algorithm can be with making videos go viral. It's unpredictable, especially when the market's saturated, competition's relentless, and somehow other creators are dropping 10-hour videos daily while you're stuck trying to finish one. That's when I realized something had to change. So, I built the solution, the Webtoon Narrative Suite, a complete one-click system that handles everything from cropping, script narration, text-to-speech, image processing, and full video generation in one smooth process. Save money, reduce hours of work, and have a tool that only gives you straight results. Click on the link down below and experience it for yourself. And if you want even more tools to supercharge your YouTube recap journey, visit my Ko-Fi and Patreon pages where I drop weekly new tools designed to keep you ahead as AI continues to steal our jobs. So tap in now before you get left behind.